So between Skepta starting this whole US versus UK thing and Clipse dropping their first album in over 16 years, a classic by the way, make sure you check that out. There's some things in the discourse online that I want to point out and how these two things are actually a little bit more in common than you might think. Let's break it down.
Crossover media.
Now before I get into it, I will say there is one way that we can actually settle this whole US versus UK debate in a way that's productive and would actually benefit both sides. So make sure you stick around for that. Up until now, I've reacted to everything through round 2. So if you haven't already, check out those reactions. But if you don't know what's going on, basically Skepta put out this tweet a little while ago saying something about how he would like to see a US versus UK clash. And nobody really made anything of it when he first said that. There were those online who were saying who they would like to see involved in a clash, but nobody like really took it to heart for real. And then Drake went on stage at Wireless saying something about how the UK has the best lyricists in the world and everything, which I think is a really convenient and strategic move after the massive L that he took from Kendrick. That in and of itself is a whole other thing. Neither here nor there. He does that, and then Joyner Lucas responds, and then all hell breaks loose. And really and truly, the summary of my whole thoughts about this whole thing is that this debate is extremely corny, it's pointless, it's counterproductive. I just really wish that it never happened. And I'm happy that when I put my thoughts out, which I was kind of nervous to do, to be honest, surprisingly, there's also a lot of people on both sides who feel like this is extremely pointless. What I said was, this is such a waste of time and energy because not only will it not prove anything or benefit the UK scene, it will only make any UK rapper that jumps in look like they have an inferiority complex and something to prove, which will only be received well by their fans and look desperate and doofy to anyone who never heard of them before. And to be honest, that's kind of what's been going on with this whole thing. I really didn't expect anybody who the people want to hear from to jump in on this. And everybody who's had something to say so far, it's kind of just been like, why? A big piece of the reason why I think this whole thing is even going down is because the UK does feel like it has something to prove, like as a whole, but also just Americans are arrogant and that's just kind of what it is. And I think people feel that. I think when we talk about music, there is this like center of the world, God complex thing when it comes to America. But on the flip side, I also think that there's this inferiority complex, like I mentioned with the UK, and this feeling like there's so much quality music out there, which there is. And that's the reason why I even started what I do on YouTube. But it's kind of reached this point where you can feel how small a lot of people in the UK feel like they are compared to the US. And just the way that they talk about themselves, the way that they talk about America unprovoked, which is really how I feel as it pertains to Skepta even putting out those tweets to begin with. Now, if you wanted to say something like, yo, let's set up a US versus UK versus or something like that, sure. But I guess that also is a bit of the culture of grime. I'm gonna touch on that at some point too. So I understand why he started it and framed it the way that he did, but even him just doing that to me kind of just feels like a scream for attention, to be honest. I will say that I do think that the UK's mid-tier of rappers outclasses America's mid-tier. And what I mean by that is like those artists who like you kind of know about them, maybe their region knows about them, their city. I think in the UK, those artists tend to impress me a little bit more, but maybe that's also because with the UK being a smaller country, there are a lot fewer of them, so there's a lot less noise to cut through. Whereas in America, every city, every corner of this country has somebody trying to pull themselves out the gutter. But I think that's also a part of the reason why I think the UK's middle tier rappers are better. It seems like in America, people who are just trying to make it out are really focusing on doing whatever they can to just get on the charts, get a quick buzz, get popping on TikTok, and just make that quick buck. Whereas with the UK's middle tier, these are people who actually seem to love music. Whereas in America, I think that their lower class are the people, ironically, who actually love making music, but because they love it so much, they're the ones who aren't kind of leaning into the gimmicks and the marketing and everything, and they're not generating that buzz, so you never hear about them. Whereas the UK's low tier, it's just people who are trying to get clout. But on the other hand, I think that America's S tier, like their most poppin', high class, like the top of the line rappers, outclasses the UK's. At a certain point, you do kind of need to mend a little bit of that marketing and all those other things into the music. And the UK just, for some reason, seems to just fall short when it reaches the parts outside of just being good at making music, being good at spitting, all of that. And I think that the UK, like as a whole, is kind of stubborn when it comes to that. Even like when you see the discourse online, this is something I'm going to touch on later. Like people don't like to hear that the UK can improve. Whereas in America, like you critique somebody, whatever, like people will call you like a fanboy or to say that you're glazing or you're hating, whatever, and they'll just write you off and ignore you. Whereas like in the UK, if you say somebody like Dave or Getz or like anybody who's like in that upper echelon can actually be a little bit better, as good as they are, all hell breaks loose. I think a piece of that does kind of lean into a little bit of that inferiority complex. Is like, how dare you say that like my GOAT can actually be even better than what they already are? The UK audience, to some degree, doesn't want to see their GOATs actually break past a certain threshold. And that's something else that I'm also going to touch on. So sorry, this is all over the place. I do have a lot of things that I want to speak on. With American rappers, it feels like there's a lot more intention in how they present themselves sometimes and what they do outside of the music, the way that they arrange the songs on an album. And that's something that I critique for everybody. But in the UK especially, sometimes it feels like they just throw together a whole bunch of really good songs on a project and say, here. And y'all out there, like, y'all eat it up because it is genuinely good. But I do also think there's still a level to break past and like a ceiling that the UK artists at the top haven't broken past yet that American artists have. And that's the reason why I think this debate kind of reaches a bit of a null and void point, and there's really no reason to even engage in it, because really and truly America just has set a bar that hasn't been surpassed yet. And it's funny that I even mentioned like this whole mid-tier thing, because I think that's kind of where Joyner Lucas falls in. There really hasn't been like a superstar American artist since, you know, the big three. That's where I think you have these mid-tier rappers who like, they're really good, but like to whoever already knows about them, I think like, I guess you can call it kind of like an algorithmic era where if you know, basically. And that's where I think there's also some artists, even before Kendrick Cole and all of them, like I think about people like Meek Mill, Big Sean. Like if you know them, you know that they can rap. But for whatever reason, I do think a big piece of it is mostly just branding and opportunity. They haven't been able to break past a certain ceiling. Then you have like the Joyner Lucases, who I think fall like right below that. And really and truly, like even from listening to these disses, like Joyner Lucas isn't a bad rapper, but he's just kind of corny. Like whenever I talk to anybody about Joyner Lucas, you can tell it is like that, oh yeah, there's him. And they wouldn't say that he's bad, but just that he's just corny. That's really the only way to describe it. I kind of put him in a similar class of like a Hopsin, like somebody where they have these videos, they go viral, and you can't deny what they're doing on a technical level, but it's just something about them just rubs you wrong. That's where he kind of falls in for me. And even though I'm not sure if I would call him a B-tier rapper necessarily, Joyner Lucas does kind of fall within that category of rappers that I predicted would get involved in this. Basically what I said is that I don't think anybody who we actually would want to hear represent either side of this debate is gonna get involved. And then when I realized that he was dropping the album, like it all kind of made sense. Like nobody really wants to hear from the people who have been putting out these diss songs so far. And it's sad because on like a musical level, they sound good. And it's even more embarrassing because when Skepta put out that tweet, these weren't people that were being mentioned in the replies and in the comments and everything. People wanted to hear from people like Kendrick, J. Cole, Gets, they wanted to hear from Little Sims. Maybe even some people said Dave, Potter. And these are the people who are saying nothing because they have nothing to say. And it really just doesn't benefit them at all to even get involved in this. But I think a big part of the reason why this is even happening is mostly because of the grime side of things, which is kind of ironic because this is becoming a US versus UK rap debate and grime is representing the UK. It really goes back to what Wiley said, like, there's no reason for anybody to be doing this. There's other things to be focused on. The UK as a whole has so much more ground to cover, and they've been covering so much ground, which is also what Gig said. Like, I get the whole we have to fight for respect thing, which I think is really more of like a grime thing, to be honest. Like, to me, it feels like a part of the identity of grime is being like this redheaded stepchild that's like outcasted and not fully respected, and like you're constantly fighting for acknowledgement and respect. And it feels like grime MCs and like grime as a culture as a whole wants the respect of the establishment, but doesn't want to be a part of the establishment because it's built so much of its identity around being anti-establishment between pirate radio and all these other things. But it's like they want to reach that level of notoriety and that level of success and recognition where you can say, yes, these people are nice, that they're good at what they do, they're world-class MCs, but getting too much credit, getting too much flowers will make them a little bit too establishment oriented. And then if you are too mainstream, I guess, at that point you can't be considered grime anymore. Like that's the kind of energy that I'm feeling around this whole thing. I understand from like a culture standpoint why the grime MCs want to clash. I understand like it's so embedded into what makes grime what it is. But I also think that like grime clashing culture doesn't really mesh well with like UK battle rap, like I'm dissing you culture. Because to me, I feel like there's really only two ways that you can get involved in like a back and forth, like a dissing battle. It's either two people who really genuinely respect each other and they just want to do like the whole verbal spar thing, or two people who have actual hatred and animosity. Grime clash culture, to me, is a bit more comical to some degree. And it has like these bars that are meant to be witty, you know, make people laugh and everything. Whereas like battle rap, like dissing culture in America is like, I'm gonna say the most disrespectful things that I possibly can. Whether or not it's true, whether or not it makes sense. Like, I'm just trying to make it sound and feel like I do not respect you. Whereas with clashing, it's like, even if the person doesn't respect the other person, like they could still coexist in a room with enough respect to kind of go back and forth and actually like try to prove who's better. Whereas like, imagine like Kendrick and Drake being in the same room right now. Like it's not gonna happen. It's not gonna end well. It's not gonna end in a rap battle, right? And this was low-key confirmed just by how Skepta started this whole back and forth, saying that Joyner Lucas raps like he went to Harvard. Like, I get it. I'm sure there's something underneath that, maybe in terms of like how proper he sounds or something. But at a surface level, all I was able to hear with that is you sound like you're smart. I can't take that seriously as an insult. In Grime, that will get the chuckle, that'll get like the response out of people, and it makes sense in Grime. But in a rap beef, and that's why I think that these two styles just don't go well together, and why it's so difficult for anybody, myself included, to really take any of this seriously for real. It's not to say that I don't think that a UK clash can actually be like at that level of like a Kendrick versus Drake, because when I think about something like Stormzy versus Wiley, Chip versus Stormzy, Chip versus Bugsy Malone, it has reached that level where you can feel like, nah, there's some actual tension there. But these people are also actually trying to prove that they're good within their own lane. It's funny because Chip is one of the artists that people were commenting saying that they wanted to see get involved in this whole US versus UK clash, because he's one of those people that can actually put pen to paper and light some fire under somebody and actually say something that makes you feel something for real. And if you're not familiar with Chip, the best way I can describe him when he gets involved in a battle or a clash is like what Kendrick did to Drake. Like that level of just being dissected, and it's like he just says things that make you say, ooh. But it needs like actual animosity, which is what this whole thing is missing to me, and why it feels so corny and just pointless. And one of the things that I said in my thread when I was predicting what would happen is that the discourse and the insults are gonna be so predictable. The usual tea and crumpets, you can't even have a gun, all of those things. People complaining about the accents and how they can't understand the artist. And then maybe you might have some people on the UK side who might throw a little jab about how kids get shot in our schools and we have a Cheeto as a president. Like, those are maybe the kind of things that can be said, but America just has so much more, because the UK doesn't even respect and support the UK, and Americans by default don't even respect the UK. And I think something that people kind of underestimate, and even when I think about like, why do Americans have such an anti-UK sentiment as it pertains to music? When you really think about it, like, we're kind of raised not on purpose, but to some degree kind of see the UK as our ops. Like, America got its independence from the UK, so there's gonna be a disposition in this conversation that's like just naturally embedded. So just off rip, there's real vitriol from America towards the UK that can actually shine through in an actual battle. But what's funny to me is that even as I've started doing reactions on this channel and I actually like pay attention to what people say in comments and all of that, the UK treats Australia the way America treats the UK. If you really deep it, like the way the UK talks about Australia is exactly how Americans talk about the UK. And it's ironic because it's like, you don't want us to use the usual tea and crumpets, all those things, right? We already know. But when it comes to Australians, when they try to rap or they try to do drill or whatever, you already know exactly what we get. We get the whole stick to rugby, kangaroo, their accent. Even when you talk about like Irish drill, right? The UK treats Ireland the same way America treats the UK. So when this whole thing started, I already knew what it was actually going to boil down to, and it wasn't going to be anything about the music. And one of the things that people were saying when this whole debate kicked off, and they're still saying up until this point right now, is that within UK grime and in American hip hop, this whole verbal spar thing is a part of the sport. So I understand that. I get it. But just the way this whole thing is going down, it's like, I have to side with Joyner Lucas. And it's one of the things that I put in the post. Like, I'm actually mad that he's making me take America's side in this political climate right now. But like, nobody cares about this for real. And that leans into the whole thought that I have around just music discourse and what really this whole episode is about in its entirety, is that there are people who just want to see drama. They just want to see the back and forth. They're bored. They're excited by seeing people want to take each other's head off on the mic. But it's like nobody who really matters actually cares about this for real. If you're at a certain point already, you've already reached like that upper echelon of UK. The only other place for you to really go at this point at like a macro level is America, right? Why would you risk somebody's introduction to you being either A, you insulting an American rapper who they've known and loved far before you, or you disrespecting their country? Whether or not you feel how you feel about America right now as an American, people still feel how they feel, and people still love their city, their town, the people within the country who they've had and built relationships with, right? It's just like when you have issues in your family, like you could talk about your family, but other people can't talk about your family. It's the same thing. And then inversely, on the American side, it's like when you've reached a certain level, like you're so big, it's at this point, it's like you're meddling in affairs that are just so beneath you that it actually ends up making you look corny. Because what does Kendrick really have to say about the UK? And then furthermore, when you're at that level as well, you have some stake in the UK market. Like you have people in that country who want to come out and see you, who respect you, who love your music, who are going to pay for a ticket. Why would you affect your income and you being able to support yourself and your family to prove something to a bunch of weirdos on the internet? It doesn't make sense. Like there's nothing to gain for those artists who are at that level. And then building on top of that point too, if that caliber of American rapper actually tried and wanted to, it wouldn't even be fair. Like the way that they would bury the UK and the fact that they're so big will only make it go viral. It's like, it's not even a fair matchup. And then furthermore, the UK don't even support the UK. So once they hear an actual diss, like something that cannot be denied from that S-tier caliber rapper, not only are the Americans gonna be like, yeah, nah, game over, America won, and not gain the respect of the UK that UK people seem to want so badly, the people within the UK who actually have some sense, they're gonna put their chips on the American side. And now, who really gained anything? Because like I said, for the big American artists who already have a platform in the UK, like why should they say something disrespectful, touch down on a plane, go to a show, and then somebody who feels like they have a point to prove pulls out a knife and then boom. Like that, it doesn't make sense. We already seen what happens if you disrespect the UK and you're not from the UK. Like we've seen what happens to people. So why would an artist with a major platform put themselves in that position? It just doesn't make sense. And to some degree, like I understand why people online want to see this so badly. I get it, and that it's really a big part of the reason why I'm making this video. So I'm gonna get to the point. I promise you it's gonna get there. I understand why people want to see it, because even when we kind of teeter towards that point where maybe we might get something exciting, looking at something like H versus Central C, for example, you end up with Central C responding to H's diss with like emojis in the comments. I get it. If I turn my brain off and I just look at it from the standpoint of just wanting to see some action, I understand, but it's hard to really take something seriously between these two countries when right now Jersey is setting the bar for what the whole world sounds like. To be fair, UK drill did set the bar for what like drill across the whole world sounds like, but at the same time, Chicago drill set the bar for what drill in and of itself is. So that can become a back and forth thing. But right now, the whole world sounds like Jersey. So how can I take the UK seriously as like somebody who isn't invested in this, when all of the emerging breakthrough artists and even some of the big artists right now are rapping on Jersey? And it's funny because for those of you who don't even know, Jersey isn't even like a mainstream thing in America. That was like a super niche sound, like niche of the niches. You had to be from a very specific region in the Northeast of America to even know where Jersey Club is. We had a couple artists like Sierra, for example, who took it to the mainstream, but even then it was kind of like, oh wow, like we're finally getting representation. But nobody actually took Jersey seriously until TikTok. And now every breakthrough artist in the UK right now has at least one song on Jersey. So how can I seriously engage in a conversation of US versus UK when, as of right now, the US is the template for UK music? As I said in the beginning of this, there's only one way to actually settle a US versus UK debate, and that's Daily Duppy. If we have a bunch of people who all think that they're the best, but they actually don't have real beef with each other to say something disrespectful, what other way can you prove who's the better of the two countries than going on a platform like Daily Duppy that is just strictly about bars. Hear me out. Imagine if you have somebody like Joyner Lucas who has his album rollout happening right now. If he jumps on Daily Duppy and he has to actually prove that his pen is elite, he has to meet the levels that Daily Duppy expects. Because the edits are gonna go viral. We know that they are. There are no platforms in America doing what Daily Duppy does, at least as far as I know. Once people start searching for that, especially with this whole debate going on, all the other UK Daily Duppies that already exist are going to come up in the search because every video is titled the same thing. If Joyner is able to capitalize off of what's happening, he gets a little bit more market share in the UK, gets some promo for his album, and with people searching Joyner Lucas because of all of this going on, they're going to stumble upon Daily Duppy. They're going to be curious and say, oh, I wonder what else is out there. And then they're going to find all these other artists from the UK who are proving how elite their pen is. Most UK rappers, especially those who aren't like super lyrical heavy, when they get on Daily Duppy, they write like their life depends on it. And that will be the standard that a lot of people will have for the UK if they're exploring it for the very first time. And that will get the respect that so many people are fighting for on the UK side of things. And that's the only way that everybody actually gets the benefit here. Because imagine if we have those rappers like a Big Sean, Sahai, Pusha T, who's on a crazy run right now with that Clipse album, next section of the video, and other artists who already have an elite pen. Imagine what would happen if Daily Duppy starts gaining traction within those audiences. People start searching, they stumble upon it, the whole platform is going to explode. And that is what's going to get the UK its respect, because people are going to discover how good the music is without having to experience these either lackluster disses or just people going back and forth saying things that you can feel don't even really have any real animosity behind it. So if GRM is smart, they should start reaching out to some American artists right now while this debate is somewhat relevant, especially those who may not be that hard to get or may have a project coming out or something. And they should get them on Daily Duppy because everybody will win in the end. I actually also have another video that I've been working on in the middle of all this that leans into this topic a bit more, so look out for that too. And before we get into the next section of this episode, here's some of the music that I've had on repeat for the last couple of days.
Mr. Cook told me that I'd end up there. 13 used to be in detention. I don't care, never care about school back then. Used to bank right under the stairs.
Something real slick with it, and I hate when a bitch gets slick with it. I got a whole lot of motion, stick with it. Teach a young boss, do big bits with it.
I know. She knows. She knows when the dogs then pull up outside, reload. I be Bentley driven and very strategic. RM sleeve, no diamonds are needed. Floors are heated, so be it.
So I've been rinsing this Clipse album since its release. I've found a lot of songs that have become like my new favorite songs for the year, just off this album alone. For all intents and purposes, you turn your brain off, it's a 10 out of 10 album. But if you do actually listen with a bit of a critical ear, as I said in my TikTok review, which I'm going to get to in a second, there are things that they could have did a little bit better about the project. Holistically, musically, it's great. I just want to put that out there. The production was A1. We know that. Pharrell is a genius. But even the Alkemist himself, the producer, he said on an interview how it can also be possible for a producer to do too much and get in the way of the artist. Even Pusha T himself said something like that in an interview on Genius, where he said, like, just listening to the beats while they were writing their raps, sometimes he just got too lost in the groove of the beat. And that's what happened with a couple of the songs, aside from also there being moments where like they were just spamming the culturally inappropriate tag, even going so far as to have it like being played underneath their voices while they were rapping. So there were moments where it felt like there was just a lot of friction and clashing between Pharrell and Clipse. Pharrell could have just taken a step back sometimes and just allowed Clipse to do their thing. Other than that, the album is great. What I think ended up being a little bit of the downfall of this album, in my opinion, if I'm being critical, is that they put something that we didn't get anywhere else in this album as the very first song. And as I usually critique with albums, they could have rearranged the track listing a little bit more. That should have been the last song, because nothing else on this album kind of leans into the topics that they talk about. They sprinkle in a couple little things here and there, but to open up talking about the passing of their parents and just go straight into coke rap for basically the whole album, it was kind of off-putting. It's like you press play, you get this, which is already far left from their usual, and you kind of get this expectation that that's what they're going to be doing throughout the rest of the album, and they don't. So that should have been the last song. There was also just an opportunity for them to kind of lean a little bit more like a pot of paper kind of approach with his last album, where they dive a little bit more into like their mindset behind while they were doing what they were doing. Malice gets into that a little bit, but even him, you can tell he was really trying to tap more into like the persona of Malice and the persona of Clipse and staying true to that. So I think there was definitely a missed opportunity for them to show a little bit more maturity in the music. Other than that, 10 out of 10 album. perfect. If I was to give it like a more critical score, 9, 8.5. But again, for the millionth time, 10 out of 10 album. If you just turn your brain off, great music. That leans into really the whole point of this whole video, which is that music discourse right now is just in the gutter. And I really do have to boil it down to just people honestly just being stupid. And there's no other way for me to really put it. And I know it's gonna sound really elitist, I get it. I'm acknowledging that up front. I do wanna put that out there, but just work with me as I walk through this, right? When I think about somebody like Anthony Fantano, for example, who did a similar video talking about like the death of music discourse, the average person talking about music on the internet and in the comments and everything, which is what I've been seeing happening with the US versus UK debate, the average person they're just stupid. I have no other way to really put it. Like, people go out of the way to not think. And that's my biggest problem, especially as like the kind of YouTuber that I am. Like, I didn't want to just jump on YouTube just making comical videos or even just doing like straight up information videos. I wanted the way that I think to shine through and how I talk about this stuff. When I put out my review of the Clipse album, granted, I did make it like kind of rage baity on purpose. I was experimenting with the format, but there were a lot of people who didn't even like engage with the critical thoughts that I gave. All I said was the album is great, but all of the things that make it great also highlight things that could have been done better. And people lost their minds. People only care to hear you say, this is amazing, or they just want to hear you say, this sucks. Nobody really wants to actually engage with music from a thoughtful standpoint. And you're seeing that in how people are responding to the US versus UK debate. All people want to see is just two sides go at each other's throats and just rip each other's heads off and just give us this spectacle. And other than that, like, people don't really care to critically engage with what's going on. My whole point as it pertains to the US versus UK thing is that nobody wins in the end here. America already feels how it feels. And then when they saw that Joyner Lucas was the one, it's like some of the sentiments was like, yeah, we just sent Joyner Lucas for you. Like, yeah, Joyner Lucas can handle you. Like, that's how unserious people feel about this on the American side. Meanwhile, you have people from the UK who are like, yeah, we need them to start taking this seriously and we need to show what Grime could do. And it's like, all you're doing is giving people more reason to not respect you. And that's what people don't see. And it's funny because there was someone who was going back and forth with me about this in comments. And I was saying, this is going to become very silly, very comical. People aren't going to take it seriously. And he didn't want to hear it. And then Munya dropped his video. Shout outs to Munya. He does great content. He's actually funny. He actually makes great raps when he's trying. But once he dropped his video and I put out my commentary, that same person came back and he was like, yo, bro, I have to say I agree with you. This UK comedian dropped something. And it's like, when you actually sit and think about it, this whole thing is just a joke to people. Meanwhile, while people from the UK on the internet are thinking this is just this whole big moment, they are too, and again, the only way for me to put it, they're just too stupid to really see how non-beneficial and how detrimental, I would even say, this is to the UK. And people aren't going to take them seriously the way that they think this whole thing is going to make them take them seriously. And it also doesn't help that on the American side, the average American is stupid. Like, the average American reads at less than, what is it? They say like a 6th grade level or something like that. So the average American can barely comprehend at a teenage level. They don't care about how good your music is. They don't care about how sick of a lyricist Getz is and how dope Pot of Paper is. All they see is those people with the funny accents coming for America. And that in and of itself is enough to fuel the most insanely stupid and ignorant person. As somebody who was fortunate enough to go to college and I was fortunate enough to be taught how to think critically, I have to recognize that the average person, not even just the average American, the average person doesn't have training in thinking about things critically. And the average person also isn't going to receive anything that makes them look dumb either. So it's a lose-lose for people like me who want to have thoughtful conversations. And that's what this whole US versus UK debate has highlighted for me. And even in critiquing the Clipse album, is that you can have valid points that are rooted in real observation, something thoughtful. And once it's not what people want to hear, they don't care. Once you're saying anything that has analysis and lends some credibility to the establishment, nobody cares what you have to say. And like one example of how dedicated to being stupid people are when it comes to talking about music was when I critiqued the Clipse album. I said how they could have done a rollout where they had like an interactive photo album website that allowed us to go through like the timeline of Clipse, right? And then somebody commented how that's not what Clipse is about. And he was saying how, oh, they don't do pop-up shops and websites and things like that. All it took was 5 seconds for me to Google Clipse pop-up shop. And one of the ways that they rolled out this album and announced it was a pop-up shop. They have merch on a website. And then what makes that comment even funnier to me is that once Clipse actually rolled out the album and you're looking at some of the lyric videos that they have and some of the live performances, they actually had pictures in the background that looked like throwback photos from a photo album. Now imagine if they put that on a website where we could actually engage with it outside of watching that video. And that was my whole point around how they can improve the rollout. Give us something to tangibly engage with other than just watching an interview. But no, that's just so far out of the reach of the brand of Clipse. It's just supposed to be coke rap and that's it. But I do understand at the end of the day that that's not everybody, and that the loudest people aren't always going to be a representation of what the broader audience wants and what they think. But at the same time, those people end up being so loud that all they do is reaffirm other people who have these bird brain takes on music and who want to make any conversation around hip hop completely devoid of any kind of thoughtful or critical analysis. And I get it, like I understand why people want to push back on getting too businessy or marketing too much of this music that is supposed to just be raw and authentic and gritty. But at the end of the day, those big artists are coming to people who think like me, people who are trained like me, people who have a degree in PR and marketing, which I have. We're the ones that they're coming to get feedback and insight as to how to promote their music. Not you as just some hip hop purist with an opinion on the internet. And that's what makes this whole thing so unfortunate, because I feel like there are people who love something so much that they want it to stay right where it's at. They don't want to see it grow, because growing and improving ends up meaning that it's out of their reach and it's no longer the exact thing that they fell in love with. But ironically, it's like, if you love something, wouldn't you want the best for it? I just want the best for all parties involved. I want us as consumers to be able to get the best possible product, and I want the artists to be able to push themselves creatively and push their own boundaries and think outside of the usual box. But a lot of the people who are engaging with this stuff don't even want that for them. They don't want them to be better. And it's such a counterproductive thing to me. Even when I think about something as simple as having American artists on Daily Duppy, I know that as soon as I put that out, there are gonna be people who are gonna push back on it. And not because it's not a good point, not because what I'm saying about a bunch of Americans searching the words Daily Duppy will bring attention to the whole platform and then make people become more aware of UK music. Not that that point doesn't have validity to it or doesn't make sense. It's just the simple premise of, I don't want Americans on a UK platform. And that's where their thinking starts and stops. And the thing that sucks the most to me is that this could have been a really big moment to actually have a real meaningful discourse and help actually put people onto UK music. But what this is really just gonna boil down to is either reaffirming how Americans already feel about the UK, or making people see the UK in a negative light because now they feel like they're being disrespected. And there was such an opportunity to maybe even open doors for more collaborations and actually put people onto UK music to get that respect that me as an American wants to see the UK get and what the UK wants to see themselves get. Now, if you're an American who stumbled upon this channel and you're open-minded and you want to explore some new music, here's some UK rappers that you should check out if you're a fan of Clipse.
Even all my in-laws know we outlaws. I've had cats jabbing with their left hand, they ain't no southpaws. They take white girl pictures they don't pout for.
Gotta make shit right, gotta make shit right. Balance and rap and track, got my hand on a scale, residue on my nail, same day I got my hand on a mic.
I said I'm on the way. With a crack cocaine.
I still remember trapping in the rain, all these grown men dependent like they're hanging on my chain. I'm in the hood, bunning a caddy zoo. Gangster random mute, I crash him like Bandicoot.
And Johnny text back, he told me my shit bangs, but I already know I ain't gonna reply back. My pack half brown, half white, it's an ice frap. I really put work in the floor under high flats.
I see man act cold, then they all defrost. Even though I'm selling death, I still thought of God.
And niggas know the facts cause I kept the receipts. Just know that there's a tech to protect the fleet.
So all that being said, I don't want to drag this episode out any longer. So y'all let me know in the comment section down below how you feel about this whole US versus UK thing. If you care, who do you think is winning? I personally think everybody's losing. That's neither here nor there. How do you feel about the Clipse album? Are there any UK albums that you think I should review? How do you feel about the state of UK music? And what do you think I should cover in a future episode?